The wind howled through the towering pines, a haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine as I stood at the edge of the dense forest. I never thought that a simple assignment could lead me to the brink of terror, but the moment I stepped into the Alaska mountains, I felt an unshakable sense of dread settle in my bones. I should have never come here, I muttered, glancing back at the path that led to the safety of my truck. It was late afternoon, and the sun hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows that twisted and turned like dark fingers reaching for me. The air was crisp and biting, filled with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. I could hear the distant call of a raven, its caw echoing through the valley, as if warning me of an impending doom. My heart raced, an instinctual response to the primal fear that crept into my mind. I had been a forest ranger for over a decade, trained to face the wilderness and all its dangers, yet nothing could prepare me for what lay ahead. As I moved deeper into the woods, the towering trees closed in around me, their gnarled branches resembling skeletal hands grasping for the sky. The ground was uneven, littered with rocks and roots that twisted like serpents beneath my feet. I could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on me, an eerie stillness that felt unnatural in a place so full of life. The vibrant colors of autumn had faded into a muted palette, the leaves crunching underfoot like broken glass. Each step I took sent a jolt of unease through my body, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I had come to this remote part of Alaska to investigate a series of mysterious disappearances. Locals had whispered about strange sounds echoing through the mountains and shadows flitting between the trees. They spoke of a creature, a beast that roamed the night, preying on those who ventured too far from the beaten path. I dismissed their stories as folklore, remnants of fear passed down through generations. But as I pressed on, doubt began to creep into my mind. What if there was some truth to their tales? Suddenly, a rustle in the underbrush broke the oppressive silence, sending my heart racing. I froze, straining my ears to catch any further sound. The rustling grew louder, accompanied by an unmistakable growl that reverberated through the air. My instincts kicked in, and I reached for my radio, but to my dismay, it crackled to life with nothing but static. A chill ran down my spine as I realized I was utterly alone, surrounded by an impenetrable wilderness that seemed to come alive with every passing moment. I turned slowly, scanning the shadows that danced between the trees. My breath quickened, and I could feel the panic rising within me like a tidal wave. I was not just a forest ranger. I was a part of this landscape, a mere intruder in a world that had its own rules. The growling intensified, echoing all around me, and I took a cautious step back, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the heat of fear pooling in my stomach, a heavy weight that threatened to pull me under. As I stumbled backward, I caught sight of something moving in the corner of my eye, a flicker of white amidst the shadows. I turned, and there it was, a pale figure standing just beyond the tree line, its features obscured by the darkness. My breath caught in my throat. It was a woman, her long hair flowing like a silken cascade, but her eyes were hollow, devoid of life. She raised a hand, pointing toward something unseen, a gesture that sent a jolt of terror coursing through me. My mind raced, torn between curiosity and instinctual fear. I knew I should run, but something compelled me to stay, to understand what this apparition wanted. The growling grew louder, more insistent, as if warning me to retreat while I still could. But I was rooted to the spot, caught in a web of uncertainty and dread. Help me. Her voice was barely a whisper, carried away by the wind. As the words hung in the air, I felt a surge of adrenaline. The forest around me seemed to close in tighter, the shadows deepening into a thick blanket of darkness. The growl morphed into a snarl, a low guttural sound that reverberated through the ground beneath my feet. I turned, ready to flee, but the figure was gone, replaced by a chilling silence that enveloped me like a shroud. In that moment, I understood that the stories were more than mere folklore. They spoke of a creature, a beast that roamed the night, preying on those who ventured too far from the beaten path. I dismissed their stories as folklore, remnants of fear passed down through generations. But as I pressed on, doubt began to creep into my mind. What if there was some truth to their tales? I had always prided myself on my ability to navigate the wilderness, to understand its rhythms and nuances. Yet, in that moment, I felt like an outsider, a trespasser in a realm governed by forces I could not comprehend. The woman's ghostly image lingered in my mind. Who was she? What had happened to her? The locals in the nearby town of Juneau had spoken of her in hushed tones, a tragic figure lost to the mountains. They claimed she had belonged to a group of hikers who had vanished without a trace years ago, their laughter echoing through the woods before they were swallowed by the silence. I had dismissed their stories, attributing them to the overactive imaginations of those who lived in isolation. But now they felt hauntingly real. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. The air was thick with an unsettling energy that crackled like static, and I could feel the weight of the trees pressing in around me. Each towering pine felt like a sentinel, bearing witness to the secrets that lay hidden in their shadows. I knew I had to push forward, to uncover the truth behind the disappearances and the mysterious figure that haunted my thoughts. My name is Alex, a forest ranger born and raised in Alaska. The wilderness had always been my sanctuary, a place where I could find solace and clarity. I had spent countless hours traversing its rugged terrain, forging a connection with the land that ran deeper than blood. My father had instilled in me a love for nature, teaching me to respect its power and beauty. But as I ventured further into these mountains, I realized that the wilderness could also be unforgiving, hiding dark secrets beneath its serene facade. As I retraced my steps, I kept my senses heightened, wary of the growling that still echoed faintly in the distance. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that danced like phantoms between the trees. I felt a chill race up my spine, a primal instinct warning me that I was not alone. I had heard tales from fellow rangers about the strange occurrences in these mountains, unexplained sounds, sudden drops in temperature, and sightings of figures that seemed to emerge from the very forest itself. I had always dismissed them as exaggerations, the product of tired minds in a vast, isolating landscape. But now, surrounded by the looming shadows, I could feel the truth of those stories settling in my bones. I stumbled upon a clearing, the ground littered with remnants of past seasons' crisp leaves, weathered branches, and the skeletal remains of long-forgotten animals. In the center stood a massive granite rock, its surface etched with strange symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. I approached cautiously, kneeling down to inspect the markings. They were unlike anything I had seen before, twisted lines and spirals that seemed to tell a story, a language lost to time. As I traced a finger along the carvings, I felt a jolt of electricity shoot through me. Visions swirled in my mind, images of a group of people, their faces filled with joy, laughter echoing through the trees. Then the scene shifted, darkness enveloping them as they ran, fear etched into every feature. The growling returned, louder now, a primal sound that reverberated through the very earth. I yanked my hand away, heart pounding as the realization hit me. The markings were a warning, a testament to the dangers that lurked within the mountains. I stood up abruptly, my pulse racing as I scanned the clearing. A sense of urgency washed over me. I needed to leave, to find safety before whatever was hunting me caught up. Yet, a part of me was compelled to uncover more, to delve deeper into the mystery that surrounded these mountains and the woman who had pleaded for help. As I turned to leave, a rustle in the underbrush caught my attention. I froze, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I prepared to confront whatever lay hidden in the shadows. The growl had shifted, now tinged with a sense of menace, as if it were a warning to stay away. I gripped my radio tightly, praying for a signal, but the static remained relentless. Then, through the thicket, a figure emerged, a man, rugged and wild, his clothes tattered as if he had been living in the wilderness for weeks. His eyes were wide with a mix of fear and desperation, and he stumbled toward me, gasping for breath. "Help. Please." He rasped, his voice hoarse. "You have to get out of here. It's not safe. They're watching." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I was not the only one who had encountered the darkness of the Alaska mountains. The man's presence added another layer to the mystery, deepening the sense of foreboding that surrounded me. Who was he? What had he witnessed out here? "Who are you?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fear churning inside me. He looked over his shoulder, eyes darting nervously. "I can't explain now. Just trust me. We have to go." The sound of growling echoed once more, closer this time, and I felt the weight of the forest pressing in around me. My instincts screamed at me to flee, to follow this stranger into the unknown, but the questions swirled in my mind: who was he, and what truth lay hidden within these mountains? With my heart pounding and the shadows closing in, I made my choice. "Lead the way," I said, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. As the man led me deeper into the thick underbrush, I felt the tension in the air intensify. The growling had faded, but an ominous stillness replaced it, pressing down like a heavy fog. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears as I struggled to keep pace with my mysterious guide. He moved with a frantic urgency, branches snapping beneath his worn boots, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just out of sight, watching us. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, attempting to keep the fear out of my voice. "What happened here?" He glanced back at me, panic etched on his face. "I'm Jacob. I was part of a group that came out here a few weeks ago. We were just hiking, but then things got strange." His voice trembled as he spoke, and I could see the memories playing out behind his eyes, dark and haunting. "We heard the growling at first, thought it was a bear or something. But it wasn't. It was something else, something that hunts in the shadows." I felt a chill creep down my spine. "What do you mean? What did you see?" He hesitated, glancing around as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. "We started losing people one by one. At first, we thought they were just getting lost, but..." His voice trailed off, the fear palpable. "I saw one of my friends. She was taken. I don't know how to explain it, but the forest, it just swallowed her whole. One minute, she was right beside me, and the next she was gone." I struggled to process his words, the weight of his experience settling over me like a shroud. "But how? What took her?" "I don't know," Jacob said, desperation creeping into his tone. "We tried to stick together, but the forest felt alive. It was like it was playing tricks on us, leading us in circles. I kept hearing voices, whispers beckoning me to follow, but something in my gut told me to run. I saw shadows moving between the trees, figures that shouldn't exist. As we navigated the dense thicket, I felt the familiar ache of the wilderness, but it was tainted now, an unsettling sense of malevolence that seeped into every crack and crevice of the forest. The trees loomed overhead, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers, and the air grew colder with each step we took. "Do you think it's still out there?" I asked, fear clawing at my throat. "Whatever took your friends." Jacob's eyes widened, and he nodded. "I know it is. I can feel it. We need to keep moving." Just then, a low growl reverberated through the trees, sending a jolt of fear through me. It was closer now, more pronounced, echoing off the rocks and filling the air with a primal ferocity. My instincts kicked in, and I felt the urge to run, but I forced myself to stay close to Jacob. As we stumbled through the underbrush, I was struck by the eerie quiet that surrounded us. The forest had fallen unnaturally still, as if holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. The whispers Jacob had mentioned danced at the edges of my mind, echoing softly, tauntingly. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog that clung to my thoughts. "Do you hear that?" Jacob asked, suddenly halting in his tracks. His eyes darted around, wide with fear. "Hear what?" I strained my ears, but all I could sense was the oppressive silence, the whispers. He murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're here. I can feel it." Before I could respond, the ground beneath us trembled, and a shadow flitted between the trees, too fast to discern. My pulse quickened. "What was that?" "I don't know," Jacob replied, his voice shaking. "But we have to get to the ridge. There's a lookout point there. We might be able to see if it's following us." We pressed onward, adrenaline fueling our movements as the shadows around us deepened. The growling returned, closer this time, reverberating through the very ground beneath us. I could feel the panic rising in my chest as I fought to keep my breath steady. As we reached the foot of the ridge, we paused to catch our breath. The trees parted slightly, revealing a narrow path that climbed steeply upward. "This way," Jacob urged, and we began to ascend, the air growing thinner and colder with each step. The sense of urgency pressed down on me. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being hunted, that something was trailing us, biding its time until the moment was right. I glanced back over my shoulder, half expecting to see a monstrous figure looming behind us, but only the trees stared back, their branches swaying gently in the wind. "Do you think we'll be safe at the top?" I asked, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. Jacob nodded, though the uncertainty in his eyes betrayed his confidence. "We have to try. If we can see it from above, maybe we can figure out how to escape." As we reached the ridge, the view opened up before us, a breathtaking panorama of the surrounding mountains and valleys. But the beauty was tainted by the darkness that clung to the edges of the forest, a stark reminder of the danger that lurked below. We stepped onto the rocky outcrop, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But it was short-lived. The growling erupted again, louder and more menacing, echoing through the valley like a primal roar. My heart raced as I scanned the tree line, searching for the source of the sound. "There," Jacob shouted, pointing toward the edge of the forest. I squinted, my breath catching in my throat, as I caught sight of a dark figure lurking just beyond the trees. It was massive, its silhouette a hulking shadow that seemed to blend seamlessly with the darkness. I could see its eyes glinting in the fading light, a predatory gaze fixated on us. "We need to move," Jacob shouted, panic lacing his voice. But before we could react, the creature lunged forward, bursting from the underbrush with a speed that defied logic. My heart dropped as I felt the world tilt around me. The growl morphed into a bone-chilling roar, and I instinctively stumbled back, fear paralyzing my limbs. In that instant, everything blurred: the creature, the forest, the very air around us. I could feel the weight of the mountains pressing down, the secrets buried within them rising to the surface. As the creature closed the distance, its eyes locked onto mine. A primal instinct surged within me. I realized that we were not just facing a beast. We were confronting the darkness that resided in the heart of the wilderness, a force that thrived on fear and despair. "Run!" Jacob shouted, breaking the trance that held me captive, with adrenaline flooding my veins. I turned and sprinted back down the path we had come, my senses heightened as I fought to escape the terror that pursued us. The growls echoed behind us, a relentless reminder that we were not alone in the depths of the Alaska mountains. As we raced down the rocky path, the adrenaline coursing through my veins was both a blessing and a curse. Every footfall sent a jolt of pain through my legs, but the fear of what chased us was a more powerful motivator. Jacob and I stumbled over roots and rocks, our breaths coming in ragged gasps as we desperately navigated the treacherous terrain. Why did you come here alone?" I gasped, trying to keep the conversation going, to stave off the panic that threatened to engulf me. "You should have had a partner." Jacob's expression hardened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of regret cross his face. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I could find them. My friends. They were counting on me." His words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of loss. It was a reminder that this was not just a rescue mission. It was a personal quest. Jacob's guilt seeped into the atmosphere around us, mingling with the fear that gripped my heart. I could sense the complexity of his emotions, his determination to confront the shadows of his past, to redeem himself for the lives he felt he had failed. Suddenly, the growl echoed again, closer this time. I glanced back, and the creature was there, a monstrous silhouette breaking through the underbrush, its eyes glowing like embers in the dim light. Panic surged through me, and I focused on the path ahead, my mind racing with thoughts of survival. "Jacob," I shouted, "we need to get to the lookout point. It's our only chance." He nodded, determination filling his eyes. "Just a little further. We can't let it catch us." As we sprinted, I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest itself was conspiring against us. The trees seemed to shift, their branches reaching out like claws, as if trying to ensnare us within their grasp. I could feel the weight of the mountains pressing down, the secrets buried within them rising to the surface. As the creature closed the distance, its eyes locked onto mine, a primal instinct surged within me. I realized that we were not just facing a beast. We were confronting the darkness that resided in the heart of the wilderness, a force that thrived on fear and despair. "Run!" Jacob shouted, breaking the trance that held me captive, with adrenaline flooding my veins. I turned and sprinted back down the path we had come, my senses heightened as I fought to escape the terror that pursued us. The whispers Jacob had mentioned earlier could very well be echoes of those lost souls, trapped in the fabric of the forest, yearning for release. Do you think the disappearances are connected to the legends?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, laced with a mixture of dread and curiosity. Jacob shot me a sideways glance, his brow furrowing. "What legends?" "The stories of the spirits that protect this land," I explained, my heart racing as I spoke. "The tales of those who disappeared, said to be taken by the forest itself to feed its hunger." Jacob's expression hardened. "You can't be serious. This is about survival, not folklore. We need to focus on getting out of here." But as we rounded a bend, the lookout point finally came into view, an outcropping of rock that jutted out over the valley, providing a breathtaking view of the mountains. I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me, but it was quickly extinguished by the roar of the creature behind us, a reminder that time was running out. We reached the lookout, gasping for breath as we turned to face the approaching danger. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched across the valley like fingers reaching for us. "It's beautiful," I said breathlessly, but my eyes were drawn to the darkening trees that surrounded us, a stark contrast to the vibrant colors of the sunset. "Yeah, but we don't have time to appreciate it," Jacob replied, his voice tense. "We need to figure out how to defend ourselves." I scanned the area, searching for anything we could use. The rocky surface was uneven, littered with boulders and sharp stones. "Maybe we can find something to throw," I suggested, my mind racing. Or, before I could finish my thought, the creature emerged from the trees, its massive form silhouetted against the fading light. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, a grotesque amalgamation of shadow and fur, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The growl erupted from its throat, reverberating through my bones, and I felt a primal instinct surge within me, a fight or flight response that screamed for survival. "Find a rock," Jacob shouted, scrambling behind a boulder as the creature lunged forward. I quickly grabbed a fist-sized stone, adrenaline sharpening my focus. What do we do? I yelled, panic threading through my voice, distracted. Get its attention away from me. Jacob shouted back, positioning himself behind a larger rock. Are you crazy? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We need to stick together. I'll be fine. Just trust me. His voice was firm, and there was no room for argument. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no choice. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was undoubtedly a foolish decision. I stepped out from behind my cover, raising the rock high above my head. Hey, over here, I shouted, my voice echoing against the mountainside. The creature turned its gaze toward me, the glow of its eyes locking onto mine. A moment of stillness passed, and for a brief second, I felt a connection, a shared understanding that transcended fear. But it was fleeting, gone in an instant, as it lunged toward me with a speed that left me breathless. I threw the rock with all my strength, but it barely grazed the creature's shoulder as it barreled past me, focused on Jacob. No, I screamed, my heart dropping as I watched Jacob scramble to his feet, trying to climb higher on the rocky ledge. He was exposed, and I could see the creature's predatory instincts kick in as it lunged toward him. In that moment, everything slowed. I could feel the weight of every decision I had made, the paths I had chosen, the lives that were now intertwined with mine in this desperate struggle for survival. Jacob, jump. I shouted, my voice filled with urgency. He glanced back at me, fear etched across his face, but he didn't hesitate. With a primal cry, he leaped from the ledge, landing heavily beside me. The creature skidded to a halt, its attention now drawn back to both of us. It snarled, anger radiating from its form as it prepared to spring again. We need to find a way to escape. I shouted, my mind racing back to the forest. Jacob yelled, and without thinking, we darted back into the trees. Leaving the safety of the outcropping behind us. As we plunged into the depths of the wilderness, the complexity of our situation settled in. We were not just fighting for our lives. We were confronting the very essence of the Alaska Mountains, its shadows, its spirits, and the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the surface. The forest closed in around us, its dark embrace both terrifying and oddly comforting. We were on the brink of uncovering something far greater than ourselves, an ancient truth that thrived in the heart of the wilderness, waiting for someone brave enough to confront it. The dense underbrush closed in around us as we dashed deeper into the forest, branches clawing at our clothes like desperate hands. My heart raced, pounding in my chest as the growls of the creature echoed ominously behind us. Every step felt like a gamble, a precarious dance on the edge of survival. I glanced at Jacob, his face a mask of determination and fear, and I knew that we had to find a way to outsmart whatever hunted us. Which way? I gasped, trying to catch my breath. Head toward the creek, Jacob shouted, pointing to a narrow stream that snaked through the trees. Water will mask our scent. We veered left, sprinting toward the sound of rushing water. The forest was alive with sounds now, rustling leaves, snapping twigs, and the distant call of wildlife. It was a stark contrast to the oppressive silence we had felt before, and I could only wonder if the creatures of the forest were watching us, caught between curiosity and fear. As we reached the creek, the water sparkled under the fading light, its gentle flow offering a moment of respite. We crouched behind a cluster of rocks, catching our breath as the adrenaline ebbed slightly. I could hear the water bubbling over the stones, a soothing sound that grounded me amidst the chaos. Do you think it lost our scent? I whispered, my voice shaky. Jacob shook his head, his jaw clenched. Not for long. It's smarter than that. We need to keep moving, but we have to be quiet. We pushed ourselves back up, blending into the shadows as we continued to follow the creek upstream. The forest felt different now, almost sentient, as if it were aware of our presence. I couldn't shake the feeling that the trees were observing us, their branches swaying gently as if whispering secrets. I recalled the stories I had heard, the indigenous legends of spirits that roamed the land, protectors of the forest. What if they were real? As we moved cautiously, I turned to Jacob. Do you think the stories are true? About the spirits? He shot me a skeptical look. You really believe in that stuff? This is about survival, not folklore. I opened my mouth to argue, but a sudden rustling in the underbrush silenced me. We froze, hearts pounding in our chests. The growl of the creature echoed again, closer this time, reverberating through the trees like a death knell. Hide, Jacob hissed, and we ducked behind a thick trunk, pressing ourselves against the rough bark. There was no time to discuss legends or spirits. Our focus had to be on the immediate threat. The creature emerged from the shadows, its massive form silhouetted against the dimming light. I could see the glint of its eyes, fierce and predatory, as it sniffed the air, searching for our scent. My breath caught in my throat as I felt a wave of fear wash over me. A T prowled along the creek, its movements fluid and deliberate. My heart raced as I watched it, every instinct urging me to flee. But we were trapped. The water on one side and the beast on the other. Do you see anything we can use? I whispered to Jacob, my eyes scanning the ground for potential weapons. He shook his head, his brow furrowed in concentration. Just stay quiet. We can't let it know we're here. As the creature prowled closer, I felt a surge of defiance rise within me. This was my home, the wilderness I had dedicated my life to protecting. I had spent years learning its secrets, understanding its rhythms. And yet here I was, cowering behind a tree, hunted by a monster. Suddenly, I remembered the stories of the spirits. What if they were more than just tales? What if the forest itself was alive, and it could help us? I closed my eyes, focusing on the sounds around me, the rustling leaves, the gurgling creek, the whispering wind. Jacob, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. What if we could call on the spirits? What if we could use the power of the forest against it? He shot me a confused look. You're serious? Yes. The forest is more than just trees and animals. It's a living entity. Maybe it can help us. Before he could respond, the creature turned suddenly, its gaze locking onto us. It let out a low growl, and I felt the adrenaline surge once more. Now I shouted, and we bolted away from the creek. Sprinting into the underbrush, we ran, the creature hot on our heels, but I concentrated on the energy of the forest. I thought of the stories, the ancient wisdom of the land, and I felt a connection forming, a thread linking me to the very essence of the wilderness, call to it. I yelled to Jacob, and he glanced back at me. Confusion still etched on his face. Call to what? The spirits. The forest. My voice was raw with urgency. It's our only chance. As we plunged deeper into the woods, I shouted into the darkening night. Spirits of the forest, hear me. We need your strength. Protect us from this darkness. The wind picked up, swirling around us like a tempest. I could feel the energy thrumming through the air, a palpable force that seemed to respond to my plea. The trees creaked and groaned, their branches swaying as if in agreement. I glanced back, and to my horror, the creature was gaining on us. Its massive form loomed closer, every muscle coiled to strike. But then something shifted, the shadows around us deepened, and I could feel the forest responding, its ancient power awakening. Keep going. You mean there are still more people out there? What if the creature gets them too? I felt a pang of guilt at the thought. We have to try. If we don't, who will? They might be lost and scared, just like we were. As we moved cautiously through the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that our encounter was only the tip of the iceberg. The stories I had dismissed as mere folklore now danced in my mind, intertwining with the reality we had just experienced. What if the creature was part of a larger mystery? It seemed to sense the presence of something greater, something that challenged its power. Suddenly, branches from the trees began to twist and stretch, reaching out toward the creature like tendrils of light. It snarled, backing away from the encroaching shadows. Confusion and fear etched across its grotesque features. "Keep calling," Jacob shouted, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Spirits of the wilderness, we are your children. Protect us," I cried, my voice rising above the chaos. The wind howled, a chorus of voices echoing through the clearing. I could feel the energy building, a force beyond my understanding. The shadows danced around us, swirling and shifting, and I knew in that moment that we were not alone. The creature roared again, but this time it was a sound filled with desperation. It turned to flee, retreating into the darkened woods, its form dissolving into the shadows as it disappeared. The energy around us began to settle, the wind calming, the shadows retracting. I gasped for breath, my heart racing as I looked at Jacob, who was equally stunned. "We did it," he exclaimed, disbelief coloring his tone. "We called on the forest," I breathed, still trying to process what had just happened. In the aftermath of the encounter, a profound silence enveloped the clearing. The moon shone brightly overhead, illuminating the forest in a soft glow. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a connection to the land that transcended fear and chaos. But as I looked around, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. He exclaimed, disbelief coloring his tone. "We called on the forest," I breathed, still trying to process what had just happened. In the aftermath of the encounter, a profound silence enveloped the clearing. The moon shone brightly overhead, illuminating the forest in a soft glow. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a connection to the land that transcended fear and chaos. But as I looked around, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. We would face whatever lay ahead, armed with the knowledge that the forest was on our side. As we steadied ourselves in the clearing, the adrenaline that had fueled our escape began to ebb, leaving behind a profound sense of vulnerability. The moon hung high above, casting a silvery glow that illuminated the forest around us. I could feel the weight of our experience pressing down on me, the reality of what we had just faced settling in like a heavy fog. Did that really just happen? Jacob asked, his voice trembling slightly. I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. "We called on the spirits of the forest. They helped us." The words felt surreal, as if I were describing a dream rather than a reality. Yet, deep down, I knew the forest had responded to our plea. It was a bond that transcended fear and chaos, a connection to something greater than ourselves. But as the initial shock faded, the enormity of our situation loomed larger. "We need to find the others," I said, my voice steadying. "We can't leave them out here." Jacob's expression shifted, uncertainty creeping back into his features. "You mean there are still more people out there? What if the creature gets them too?" I felt a pang of guilt at the thought. "We have to try. If we don't, who will? They might be lost and scared, just like we were." As we moved cautiously through the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that our encounter was only the tip of the iceberg. The stories I had dismissed as mere folklore now danced in my mind, intertwining with the reality we had just experienced. What if the creature was part of a larger mystery? What if it was a guardian of the forest, a being that existed beyond our understanding? The tension in the air thickened as we navigated deeper into the woods. The shadows felt more pronounced, and the whispers of the forest echoed around us. I could almost hear the voices that had called to us before, urging us to listen, to pay attention to the signs. "Alex," Jacob said, breaking my reverie. "What if we're not alone? What if the creature is still watching us?" I glanced around, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling with unease. We'll have to be cautious, but we can't let fear paralyze us. We have to find the others. As we continued our search, the forest began to shift. The trees stood taller, their branches weaving together to form an intricate canopy overhead. The silvery light of the moon danced through the leaves, casting ethereal shadows on the ground. It was beautiful, but I couldn't help but feel that this beauty masked deeper, darker secrets. Hours passed as we wandered through the woods, calling out for the missing hikers. My voice echoed into the silence, swallowed by the vastness of the forest. Each unanswered call weighed heavily on my heart. I felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. These were lives at stake, lives that had been intertwined with the wilderness for too long. Suddenly, a faint sound pierced the stillness. It was a voice, faint but unmistakable. I turned to Jacob, my heart racing. "Did you hear that?" He nodded, eyes wide with hope. "It came from over there." He gestured to a narrow path that veered off to the right, partially obscured by underbrush. We followed the sound, our hearts pounding in unison as we pushed through the foliage. As we neared the source, I could hear more voices, muffled whispers and cries for help. It was a desperate symphony, a call that resonated deep within my soul. "Stay close," I said, my voice low but urgent. "We're almost there." We emerged into a small clearing, and my heart sank at the sight before us. A group of hikers was huddled together, their faces pale and drawn. They looked disheveled, haunted by fear and uncertainty. Among them was a woman with dark hair, her eyes wide and frantic. "Alex," she cried, rushing toward me. "Thank God you're here. We thought we'd never see anyone again." "Sarah," I breathed, relief flooding through me. She was one of the women I had met at the ranger station, a friend of Jacob's. "What happened? Where are the others?" She hesitated, glancing back at the group. "We got separated." It was a voice, faint but unmistakable. I turned to Jacob, my heart racing. "Did you hear that?" He nodded, eyes wide with hope. "It came from over there." He gestured to a narrow path that veered off to the right, partially obscured by underbrush. We followed the sound, our hearts pounding in unison as we pushed through the foliage. The shadows around us felt alive, pulsating with an energy that could just as easily be malevolent as protective. "Alex, we need to move," Jacob urged, his voice urgent. "The longer we stay here, the more vulnerable we are," I nodded, leading the group back toward the creek. "Stay close together. We'll use the water to mask our scent again." As we navigated the forest, I caught glimpses of the anguish etched on the faces of the hikers. They were scared, but there was also a glimmer of hope, a shared determination to survive. I felt a sense of camaraderie forming among us, a bond forged in the fires of fear and uncertainty. But as we approached the creek, the atmosphere shifted once more. The air grew colder, and the shadows deepened around us. I could hear the growl again, faint but unmistakable. It was a reminder that we were not safe yet. "Quick, to the water!" I shouted, urgency lacing my voice. We dashed toward the creek, the cold water splashing against our legs as we waded in. It felt strange, almost surreal, as the moonlight shimmered on the surface of the water. I glanced back at Jacob, who was scanning the darkness for any signs of the creature. "Where is it?" He whispered, fear creeping back into his voice. "I don't know," I replied, my heart racing. "But we have to keep moving." As we made our way upstream, the growls grew louder, echoing through the trees. The creature was close, and I could feel the tension rising among the group. Fear was palpable, a thick fog that hung in the air. "Alex, what do we do?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, trying to quell my own rising panic. "We stay together. We're stronger in numbers." and we have to trust the forest. It helped us before. Maybe it will help us again. With newfound resolve, we pressed on, weaving through the trees and keeping the creek on our side. As we moved, I could feel the forest shifting around us, the shadows dancing in the moonlight. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a reminder of the power and danger that lay within the wilderness. But just as hope began to flicker within me, the growls echoed again, closer, louder, more menacing. I turned, and the creature emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing like fiery coals. It stood there, massive and imposing, a formidable force that loomed over us. "Run!" I shouted, adrenaline surging as I pushed the group forward. We dashed away from the creek, hearts pounding in unison as we sprinted deeper into the forest. I could hear the creature crashing through the underbrush behind us, its growls filling the air like a death knell. The shadows seemed to close in around us, a chaotic blend of light and dark. "Stay together," I yelled, my voice hoarse from fear. As we ran, I felt the weight of our situation pressing down on me. The wilderness was no longer a sanctuary. It was an arena of terror, and we were trapped within its grasp. But as I glanced back at the hikers, I saw the fire in their eyes, the determination to survive. We were in this together, and we wouldn't go down without a fight. "Keep moving," I urged, pushing through the underbrush. We had to find a way to escape, to outsmart the creature that hunted us, and in that moment, I felt the forest respond, its energy pulsing around us. The shadows whispered, promising that we were not alone. We would face whatever lay ahead. United in our fight for survival, the forest seemed to come alive as we fled, the shadows around us swirling like dark specters, taunting us as we raced through the underbrush. My heart thundered in my chest, each beat driving me forward, pushing me to protect those who relied on me. The growls of the creature reverberated in the air, closer now, reminding us of the danger lurking just behind. "Alex," Jacob shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to find some place to hide." I scanned the trees, adrenaline sharpening my instincts. "There, that thicket." I pointed to a dense cluster of bushes and low-hanging branches. "If we can make it there, we might buy ourselves some time." Without a second thought, we darted toward the thicket, the underbrush scratching our skin as we ducked and weaved through the tangled branches. The moment we reached the cover, we huddled together, hearts racing, breaths coming in ragged gasps. "Stay quiet," I whispered, my voice barely audible. We could hear the creature's footsteps crashing through the underbrush, and for a moment, it felt as if the very ground we stood on was trembling beneath its weight. As we crouched in the shadows, I could feel the fear radiating from the group. Sarah clutched my arm tightly, her eyes wide with terror. "What if it finds us?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "It won't," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We'll outsmart it. We have to trust each other and the forest." The sounds of the creature grew louder, and I could see its shadow moving just outside our thicket. My mind raced with thoughts of how to escape. We had to find a way to turn the tables, to reclaim our power in this situation. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about confronting our fears and taking control of our fate. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, focusing on the stillness around us. The whispers of the forest, the rustling leaves, and the distant sound of flowing water all melded together, creating a symphony of life that reminded me we were part of something greater. I took a deep breath, letting the energy of the forest fill my lungs. "Listen," I said, my voice steadying. "We need to work together. If we can distract it, we might have a chance to escape. Jacob, do you have any supplies left?" He nodded, pulling a small flashlight from his backpack. "I have this, but it's nearly dead." "Perfect," I said, formulating a plan. "We can use it to create a distraction." If we can lead it away, we can make a break for it. The others nodded, their expressions shifting from fear to determination. We were united in our fight, and I could feel the strength of our collective spirit. Okay, I continued, my voice low but firm. Jacob, you'll shine the light in one direction to draw its attention. The rest of us will create noise to further confuse it. When it moves, we'll slip away in the opposite direction. He swallowed hard, but the resolve in his eyes told me he was ready. I pointed to a dense cluster of bushes and low-hanging branches. If we can make it there, we might buy ourselves some time. Without a second thought, we darted toward the thicket, the underbrush scratching our skin as we ducked and weaved through the tangled branches. The moment we reached the cover, we huddled together, hearts racing, breaths coming in ragged gasps. Stay quiet, I whispered, my voice barely audible. 1, 2, 3. Jacob flicked on the flashlight, its beam slicing through the darkness and illuminating the underbrush. Over here, he shouted, his voice ringing out like a siren call. The growling stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence. For a moment, I held my breath, praying that our plan would work. The creature hesitated, its shadow looming uncertainly in the thicket. Now, I yelled, and we began to clap and shout, creating a cacophony of noise that filled the clearing. The creature's growl transformed into a confused snarl, and I could see it shifting, torn between the sounds and the light. My heart raced as I watched it move toward Jacob's direction, its form a mass of shadow and muscle, moving with a predatory grace. Go. Now, I urged, and we bolted from our hiding place, sprinting in the opposite direction. The forest opened up before us, branches snapping beneath our feet as we ran. My lungs burned, and I could feel the fear and adrenaline propelling me forward. I stole a glance back and saw the creature, still focused on Jacob, the flashlight illuminating its terrifying features, a hulking mass of fur and teeth, eyes burning with an unnatural hunger. Keep going, I shouted, urging the group to push forward. We sprinted through the trees, hearts pounding in unison, fueled by the primal instinct to survive. The forest was a blur around us, shadows twisting and turning as we raced through the underbrush. I could feel the fear dissipating, replaced by a fierce determination to escape. Suddenly, we burst into a small clearing, and I skidded to a halt. This way. I pointed toward a rocky outcrop, a natural barrier that could provide cover. We dove behind the rocks, crouching low as we caught our breath. 1, 2, 3. Jacob flicked on the flashlight, its beam slicing through the darkness and illuminating the underbrush. Over here, he shouted, his voice ringing out like a siren call. The growling stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence. For a moment, I held my breath, praying that our plan would work. The creature hesitated, its shadow looming uncertainly in the thicket. Now, what's next? I took a moment to gather my thoughts. The creature was still out there, but we had bought ourselves some time. We need to find a way to signal for help. We're not far from the ranger station. If we can reach the high ground, we might be able to see it. Jacob nodded, his brow furrowed in determination. Let's go. We can't waste any more time. As we moved cautiously through the clearing, I felt a shift within myself. The fear that had once gripped me tightly was loosening its hold, replaced by a sense of empowerment. I was no longer just a ranger. I was a leader, responsible for the lives of those around me. The journey through the forest became a test of not only our physical endurance, but also our emotional resilience. Each step forward was a testament to our strength, a reminder that we could face the darkness together. As we climbed higher into the mountains, the landscape began to change. The trees thinned, giving way to rocky outcrops that overlooked the sprawling forest below. I could see the distant lights of the ranger station twinkling like stars in the night. There it is, I shouted, pointing toward the flickering lights. We're almost there. But just as hope surged within me, I heard the growl again, closer this time, more menacing. My heart sank as I turned to see the creature emerging from the shadows. Its eyes locked onto us with a predatory intensity. "Run," I yelled, and we took off again. Sprinting toward the lights, the creature pursued us, its growls echoing through the night, but we couldn't stop now. The lights grew brighter, and I could feel the energy of the ranger station pulling us closer. With every ounce of strength left in my body, I pushed forward, urging the group to keep going. We're almost there. Just a little further. As we neared the ranger station, I could see the door swinging open, a figure emerging into the light. It was another ranger, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm as he caught sight of us. "Get inside. Quickly," he shouted, and we surged forward, bursting through the door as the creature's growls echoed behind us. We tumbled into the safety of the ranger station, hearts pounding and breaths ragged. I slammed the door shut, locking it tight as we collapsed against it, gasping for air. "We made it," I whispered, disbelief flooding through me. We were safe, at least for now. The ranger turned to us, his eyes wide. What in the world happened out there? I took a deep breath, my heart still racing. We were being hunted. There's something in the forest, something dangerous. We need to alert the others, warn them. As we gathered ourselves, the fear began to transform into a resolute strength. We had faced the darkness together, and although we had lost friends along the way, we had survived. In that moment, I understood that growth often comes from overcoming the most harrowing of challenges. We were no longer just individuals caught in a terrifying situation. We were a team forged in the fires of adversity, our bonds stronger than ever. Yes, we prepared to take action. I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We would not let fear define us. We would stand together, ready to face whatever came next, and we would emerge from this experience forever changed. The door of the ranger station slammed shut behind us, and the sound reverberated in the stillness, sealing us inside the dimly lit space. The weight of the creature's presence still lingered, a palpable tension that clung to the air like fog. We huddled together, hearts racing, adrenaline coursing through our veins as we processed the chaos we had just escaped. "Are we safe?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling as she looked around, searching for reassurance. "For now," I replied, though I could feel the uncertainty gnawing at my insides. The creature might be lurking just outside, its hunger unsated. But we can't let our guard down. We need a plan. Jacob, still catching his breath, nodded. "What do we do? We can't stay in here forever." I turned toward the other ranger who had stepped back apprehensively, his eyes wide with shock. "Do you have any emergency protocols? Weapons? Anything we can use to defend ourselves?" He shook his head, looking overwhelmed, but then pointed toward a storage room at the back of the station. There should be some supplies in their flares, bear spray, maybe even a rifle. But we need to be careful. If that thing is out there. His voice trailed off, leaving the unspoken threat hanging in the air. "Let's go," I urged, my resolve hardening. We need to arm ourselves before we make our next move. As we moved cautiously toward the storage room, the atmosphere in the ranger station felt charged with tension. Each creak of the floorboards beneath our feet echoed like a warning, and I could sense the creature lurking just beyond the door, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Jacob and I exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between us. We had come too far to let fear dictate our actions. We had to take control of our fate. Inside the storage room, we quickly rummaged through the shelves, searching for anything that could aid us. I found a canister of bear spray and a few flares, while Jacob unearthed a rifle, its weight reassuring in his hands. The other ranger secured a flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. "We'll need to work together," I said, gathering everyone's attention. "Our goal is to create a distraction, to lure the creature away from the station, and then signal for help. The flares should draw its attention, and we can use the bear spray if it comes too close. What if it doesn't work?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with fear. I took a deep breath, trying to project confidence. "We'll adapt. We have to trust that we can outsmart it. We've made it this far. We can't give up now." The group nodded, and I could see the determination returning to their expressions. This was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming our power and confronting the darkness head-on as we prepared. I could feel the weight of responsibility on my shoulders. I was no longer just a ranger. I was a leader, guiding my friends through the unknown. It was a heavy burden, but it fueled my resolve to protect them. "Okay, here's the plan," I began, laying out the details. "Jacob and I will head outside to set off the flares. We'll draw its attention away from the station. While we do that, the rest of you need to stay inside and be ready to lock the door if it tries to come back." "Then what?" Sarah asked, biting her lip. "Once we've created enough distance, we'll signal for help and wait for backup. If it comes after us, we'll use the bear spray to defend ourselves," I explained, trying to convey both urgency and reassurance. We gathered the supplies and shared one last look, a mixture of fear and determination binding us together. I could see the flicker of courage in their eyes, and it reminded me that we were stronger as a team, with everything in place. We stepped toward the door, my heart racing as I reached for the handle. The air was thick with anticipation, and I could feel the pulse of the forest outside, a living entity waiting to see what would unfold. "Stay close," I whispered to Jacob as I opened the door. The cool night air rushing in, we stepped outside, the moonlight illuminating the clearing. But the shadows felt deeper, menacing. I scanned the area, my senses heightened. The growls had faded, but I knew it was still out there, lurking in the darkness. Now I shouted, and Jacob lit the flare, the bright flame erupting into the night sky like a signal of defiance. The creature's growl returned, a low rumble that sent chills down my spine. I could feel its gaze locking onto us, its presence palpable in the air, over here. I yelled, waving the flare in the air. The bright light casting eerie shadows around us. The creature emerged from the trees, its monstrous form illuminated by the flare. It was a terrifying sight, a hulking beast with glowing eyes and sharp teeth, its fur matted and wild. "Run!" I shouted to Jacob, and we sprinted away from the ranger station. The flare lighting our path as we dashed into the forest. The adrenaline surged through me as we plunged deeper into the trees, the sounds of the creature crashing through the underbrush echoing behind us. We had to keep moving, had to create the distraction that would buy our friends time. "Keep going," I urged, the burning flare in my hand illuminating the path ahead. "We need to lead it away." As we ran, I could feel the energy of the forest shifting around us. The whispers of the trees seemed to echo my thoughts, urging us forward. We were not just running away. We were confronting the darkness, reclaiming our power in a world that had threatened to consume us. I could hear the growls growing louder, the creature closing the distance. We had to act fast. I glanced at Jacob, and we exchanged a determined nod. We would not let fear define us. "Light another flare," I shouted, and he quickly ignited another one, the bright flame casting a fiery glow in the darkness. We waved it around, drawing the creature's attention, and I could see its glowing eyes fixate on the light. It was working. "Let's head toward the ridge," I shouted, steering us toward a rocky incline. "If we can get higher, we can signal for help." We sprinted toward the ridge, the terrain becoming uneven and treacherous. My heart raced as I pushed forward, the weight of our situation heavy in my chest. We were so close to reaching safety, but I could feel the creature gaining on us. Keep moving, I urged, my voice hoarse. As we ascended the ridge, I could see the ranger station in the distance, a beacon of safety. But I also knew the creature was relentless, driven by instinct and hunger. Almost there, Jacob shouted, his voice filled with determination. With one final push, we reached the top of the ridge. A breathtaking view spread out before us. The forest stretched endlessly, the moon casting a silvery sheen over the treetops. I quickly scanned the horizon, looking for any signs of help. We need to signal for backup. With the last flare in hand, I lit it and raised it high above my head, the bright light piercing through the darkness. I waved it back and forth, praying that someone would see it. Then I turned to Jacob, urgency in my voice. If we can keep its attention, we might just make it. Growls echoed ominously behind us as the creature approached, its massive form emerging from the shadows. I could feel the tension mounting, the air thick with anticipation. Get ready, I shouted, preparing for whatever would come next. This was at the moment we had been preparing for. The battle between light and darkness, hope and despair, was about to reach its climax. The creature's growls reverberated through the night as it emerged from the shadows, its massive form silhouetted against the moonlit forest. I could see its glowing eyes fixed on us, a predatory hunger radiating from its every movement. My grip tightened around the flare, the heat of the flame a small comfort in the face of such primal terror. Get ready, I shouted to Jacob, adrenaline surging through me. We need to keep it distracted until help arrives. With a sudden rush of energy, I raised the flare high, its bright light illuminating the surrounding trees and casting eerie shadows. The creature paused, its head tilting slightly as it focused on the flame, curiosity mixing with its instinct to hunt. I could feel my heart racing, the ticking clock of our survival echoing in my ears. Now, I yelled, throwing the flare further down the ridge. The flare arced through the air before landing in the underbrush with a fiery explosion, sending sparks flying in all directions. The creature lunged toward the light, its massive paws pounding the ground as it chased after the distraction. This way, I urged Jacob, and we sprinted along the ridge, our breaths coming in ragged gasps as we tried to put distance between ourselves and the creature. Where's the backup? Jacob panted, glancing over his shoulder. I don't know, I shouted back, panic creeping into my voice. But we have to keep moving. We can't let it corner us. We zigzagged along the ridge, weaving between the trees, the creature's growls echoing ominously behind us. I could feel the ground trembling beneath our feet, the forest alive with the chaos of our escape. Each step brought us closer to the edge, and I knew we had to make a stand. Alex, Jacob called, fear creeping into his voice. What if it catches up to us? We'll fight, I replied, determination flooding my words. We're not going down without a fight. As we reached a clearing at the edge of the ridge, I quickly scanned the area. It was open, with fewer places to hide, but it offered a vantage point. We can use the flares to create a barrier, I suggested, my mind racing. If we can manage to keep it at bay long enough, we might buy ourselves time until help comes. Jacob nodded, his face a mask of resolve. Let's do it. We set the remaining flares in a semicircle around the clearing, lighting them one by one. The bright flames flickered and danced, casting a warm glow that contrasted sharply with the chilling darkness surrounding us. The creature hesitated at the edge of the clearing, its glowing eyes narrowing as it assessed the flames. Stay close to the fire, I instructed, my heart pounding in my chest. It's afraid of the light. As the creature prowled closer, I could see its teeth glinting in the firelight, a reminder of the deadly predator it was. My throat felt dry, and I fought against the rising tide of fear threatening to overwhelm me. This was at the moment where we would either succumb to the darkness or rise against it. "Alex," Jacob shouted, pointing toward the trees. "Look!" A faint flicker of light appeared in the distance, growing brighter as it approached. I felt a surge of hope, but knew we had to hold our ground until backup arrived. "Don't lose focus," I warned, raising another flare as the creature lunged at us. "Get back," I shouted, aiming the flare at it. The burst of orange light startled it, causing it to retreat momentarily. "Now's our chance," Jacob called out, and together we moved closer to the edge of the clearing, positioning ourselves between the creature and the approaching light. "Keep it distracted," Jacob yelled, grabbing a branch from the ground and waving it in the air. "Over here, you ugly beast." With the creature's attention drawn away from the approaching rescue team, I took a deep breath and shouted, "Help is coming. Just hold on a little longer." The creature snarled, its focus shifting between us and the distant lights. It took a step closer, its massive frame casting a shadow over the flames. I could feel the heat radiating from the fire, a protective barrier against the darkness. The distant lights grew closer, more defined now. I could make out the figures of rangers and searchers, their shouts echoing through the trees. "We're over here," I shouted, waving the remaining flares, each burst of light illuminating the clearing. With one last surge of energy, I hurled the last flare toward the creature, the bright light exploding in front of it. The creature recoiled, snarling in frustration, its glowing eyes darting between the flames and the approaching figures. "Now," I yelled, as the rangers burst into the clearing, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The creature's growls turned to frantic roars as it realized its advantage had been lost. The search team quickly surrounded us, their shouts echoing in the night. "This way. Over here," they called, forming a protective barrier around us. Flashlights flickered like stars, illuminating the clearing and pushing back the shadows. The creature, sensing the shift in power, hesitated for a moment before retreating into the depths of the forest, its growls fading into the night. I could feel the collective breath of relief from my group as the danger began to dissipate. "Are you all okay?" one of the rangers asked, rushing toward us. Concern etched on his face. "We're alive," I breathed, the adrenaline finally beginning to ebb. "But we need to find the others." The rangers quickly organized a search party, their training kicking in as they prepared for the next phase of our rescue. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me as I watched them work, a reminder of the strength that comes from community and teamwork. As the search party moved into the woods, I turned to Jacob and Sarah, relief flooding through me. "We did it," I said, my voice shaky. "We faced it together." Jacob nodded, his face pale but resolute. "We didn't let fear win. We fought back." The night felt different now, charged with newfound hope. The darkness still loomed, but we had faced it and emerged stronger. And as the rangers ventured into the forest, I knew we would not only find the others, but also uncover the truth behind the mystery that had haunted these mountains for so long. Together, we would reclaim the forest, restoring balance to a place that had been shrouded in fear. And in that moment, I realized that the true power lay not just in facing our fears, but in standing together against the darkness. As dawn broke over the Alaska mountains, the first light of day chased away the shadows of the night. Exhausted but alive, we gathered at the ranger station, the air filled with a sense of triumph tinged with lingering dread. The search party had returned, bringing with them a sense of relief as they reported that all members of Jacob's group had been found, some shaken, others injured, but all alive. The forest felt different in the morning light, as if it had been cleansed of the darkness that had taken hold. We stood together, sharing stories of our harrowing experiences, each tale a thread woven into the fabric of our survival. "I never thought I could face something like that," Jacob admitted, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. "But we did it. Together," I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "It's amazing what we can accomplish when we stand united against our fears." The Rangers worked diligently to secure the area, ensuring that the creature would not pose a threat again. They established new protocols for the safety of future hikers and began documenting the strange occurrences that had haunted the forest for years. As I watched the sun rise higher in the sky, painting the mountains in hues of gold and orange, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had faced a darkness that many could only whisper about, and we had emerged stronger. The bond forged in those harrowing hours would remain with us, a reminder of the courage found in unity and the strength that lies in confronting our fears head-on. Months later, the Alaska mountains were once again a place of beauty and wonder. The stories of the creature had transformed into legends, shared around campfires and passed down through generations. The Rangers had implemented educational programs to inform visitors about the wilderness, emphasizing respect for nature and the importance of teamwork in the face of adversity. Jacob had become an advocate for forest safety, sharing our story to inspire others to face their fears. The bonds we had formed that night became the foundation of a community dedicated to protecting the wilderness and each other, ensuring that the darkness would never reclaim its hold on the land. Join the fight to preserve our wilderness. Every year, countless adventurers explore the beauty of the great outdoors, but it's essential to respect and protect these natural spaces. Educate yourself about wildlife safety, participate in local conservation efforts, and share your experiences to inspire others. Together, we can ensure that the stories of courage and teamwork resonate through generations, fostering a love for nature that honors both its beauty and its power. Let your adventures make a difference.